The properties of mathematics. Looks like it's just going to have you going over identifying what property is being used, commutative, associative, or distributive. Once you get the hang of them, it's pretty easy. I've provided some links, some videos for more explanation. I've also made some notes. The notes that I made will hopefully be particularly useful. So just click on them. It has examples of each of them. So spend some time just looking and making some observations. So it asks what example shows the associative property. So I'm going to look at my notes. The associative property looks like this. It's got A plus B plus C equals A plus B plus C, but there are some parentheses in different spots, but it's going to give you the same answer either way. So let's look at how these are set up. So this one has no parentheses. This is the commutative. This one has parentheses, but it has no addition symbol between this. It's got nothing, so it's multiplication. So this is a distributive. This one has a number plus a number plus a number equals that same order, but the parentheses are just in a little bit of a different spot. So C is the associative property example. What property illustrated in the example? What property is illustrated in the example below? Again, we've got 12 plus negative 8 plus 3 equals 12 plus negative 8 plus 3 with some parentheses involved. So this is the associative. What example illustrates the inverse property? Let's look at our notes. So the inverse property is A plus negative A would be 0. So like, if, for example, 3 plus negative 3 is 0, or negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So we have negative 115 plus 0 is negative 115. That's not the inverse. We have 29 plus negative 29 is 0. So that's the inverse. So you can think of the inverse kind of as the opposite. So we've got 29 is going to be the opposite of negative 29. What property is illustrated? 89 plus negative 705. Negative 705 plus 89. You're adding the same amount. You don't have any parentheses. What we're looking at here is the commutative property. What property is illustrated? We've got negative 35 plus 35. So if we look at our notes and we try to find one that looks like this, it looks like the additive opposite inverse, so inverse. What property? This one, we're not adding the inverses together, so it's not the inverse. If we look at our notes and we have some number plus 0 is that number, in this case, we have negative 362 plus 0 is negative 362. That's the identity property. What example shows the distributive property? So we've got negative 32 times x plus 8 in parentheses equals negative 32 times x minus 256. If we did negative 32 times 8, we'd get negative 256. So the distributive property says we're taking this number and multiplying it by this one and this one, and then adding them together. So this is the distributive property example. This one would be commutative. This one would be associative. On to the next lesson.